Hello, everyone, and welcome to That Tracks Podcast, a podcast where I'm not good at this. Usually, Tim comes in clutch with the random facts and information about what we're tracking here. This week, we're going to be tracking, you know what, actually, full transparency. I'm recording this on Sunday. Today is Mother's Day. And this is the first opportunity that I've had the opportunity to sit down and record this podcast for you all. But today we are tracking what should be an exciting day for Walt Disney World in terms of news about Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Disney Parks teased this morning. Yeah, we're jumping right into a news segment. But Tiana or Disney Parks teased this morning that tonight during American Idol, Disney Parks had a special announcement regarding Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and then after that, different theme park news reporters broke the news that the opening date is scheduled for June 28th. Um, at this point in the day, that has not been announced by Disney Parks. They're still holding on to the fact that an official announcement will be coming out this evening, so Sunday evening, regarding. They didn't say what the announcement was going to be about, but we all assume it's an opening day announcement. And the people who have been reporting that the opening day is June 28th are very reputable sources. So it sounds like that's going to be our opening date for Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I am so excited. If you guys remember back towards the beginning of this podcast, at the beginning of the year, I felt like it was going to be during summertime, and I'm so pumped that it's happening. It's here. We still don't have any specifics on annual pass holder previews, DVC previews, cast member previews. Um, I'd imagine that whatever announcement formally happens this evening during American Idol will yield more information about all of that. So stay tuned. I'm sure that it will be talked about. I'm sure we will talk about it on next week's episode. Um, as you can see, it's just me by myself today. Tim is not able to record with me for this week. They have some fun family adventures going on. I'm sure you guys will see all of that posted on their YouTube channel, so stay tuned for those fun adventures. It is Mother's Day, so a lot of family time is happening. I This is probably not going to be a very long episode because I'm ready to go back and be with the mother of my children. We've been able to have fun with Francie today. She's been having her ideal Mother's Day. Got to spend time with the boys this morning, and this morning actually got off to a little bit of a rough start. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw this, but I had what I thought gridlocked Francie's gifts really well, hiding them, stashing them away in one of the boys' bedrooms. And our wonderful puppy, he's about a year old. He's a mini golden doodle. His name is Obi. The force is strong with him because he broke into where the gifts were, grabbed a bag, a 6-ounce bag of dark chocolate, and ate the entire bag. It was very scary, actually. It was a pretty stressful morning. Francie was able to take the boys. They went to church this morning, and I took Obi and went to the vet. They were able to take care of the issue. He's good. He's been pretty sleepy today, but other than that, he's doing fine. But it was a little bit of a hectic start to the morning for sure. Not an ideal situation. I still did get to make breakfast for Francie, and her mom is visiting in town right now, so that was good. And she got her gifts, and everybody was happy, and we're doing well. But I am ready to get back to the Mother's Day festivities. But I had to jump on and record with you guys. I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited to be home. I personally had a great time out in Disneyland. It was filled with ups and downs actually, and I'm just gonna be totally honest and totally transparent. Like that's what this episode's going to be about. I don't have a lot of like news to break with you guys. I don't to go through. There is news out there for sure, but I'm not going to spend time going through that. That's something that Tim and I will go through together on next week's episode. Dates were announced for Mickey's not so scary Halloween party. Um, Oogie Boogie Bash out in California. Dates were announced. So there's a lot to talk about with all of that, and we'll break it down, I promise, in next week's episode. But this week I want to talk about Disneyland. I posted on our Instagram story for that tracks. It's that underscore tracks underscore podcast. I posted that I wanted you guys to ask me questions about my trip to Disneyland, and you guys asked me so many wonderful questions. And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the trip by going through a lot of those questions, but I wanted to also just give you a little bit of an overview of the trip first. When I say that there were highs and there were lows, the night before I left for the trip, I all of a sudden had really bad anxiety. Sometimes my anxiety just kind of hits me out of nowhere when I least expect it. And I know that I talk about my mental health a lot. It's a big part of my life, and that's just going to be that. Like, it's a part of who I am, and it's a part of what I experience, and it's a part of how I experience fatherhood. It's a part of how I experience being a married man. It's a part of how I experience theme parks as well sometimes, and it definitely was a part of how I experienced my Disneyland trip, unfortunately. So the night before I left, I got really bad anxiety. I was talking to my wife about it, and I think a lot of it was rooted in separating from my wife and kids. Um, I get a little bit of separation anxiety from time to time, and being away from them for a period of time can sometimes yield anxiety in me. I feel that way with a lot of my extended family as well. My family kind of lives all over the United States. I have a sister in Boston, I have a brother in Nashville. My parents live in Michigan. I have a brother out in Denver, Colorado. So we're spread out all over the place, and that's hard for me. I was the oldest growing up, and I always felt like a caretaker for my family. I felt like I was the rock for my parents. I felt like I was the rock for my younger siblings. And so being as we've gotten older and really there was a moment where my family sort of moved away from me when I was in college. They had opportunities and they had to take them, and it was a tough moment for me. And it's really what stirred a lot of, like, I don't know if it's where it came from, still unpacking a lot of that, but um, it's what stirred this sort of like separation anxiety in me. And so when I go for long periods of time away from the ones that I love most, it can be challenging for me. And so I didn't think that was going to be happening. I was so excited leading up to this trip. I could not wait. I couldn't wait to be out there. I couldn't wait to be out there visiting with my friend. And so when that hit, it was challenging. And the next day flying out to Los Angeles, I was anxious. I was anxious throughout the flight. And then finally landing, I tried my best to just like suppress it and just kind of like pack it away. And honestly, like that probably wasn't the best thing for me to do either. Because I think what happened is I packed it for so long and then it came to a head finally. One of the evenings that we were there, so we flew in on a Thursday. Friday evening. Thursday I was up for 24 hours, and sometimes that's just how it goes when you're traveling out to Los Angeles from Florida and you have so many things to do in that first day. I left my house at 4:30 in the morning to catch my flight. I flew out of Tampa. I live in Central Florida, and I'm very centrally located in Central Florida, so flying from MCO or Orlando International and Tampa International is kind of hit or miss sometimes for me. I tend to fly out of Tampa International. I love that airport. It's very easy to navigate. So I flew out of Tampa, and I left my house at 4:30 in the morning. Immediately when I landed, got picked up by my friend. We went to the studio lot. We did the studio tour. We met up with a friend who works in the animation building, hung out with her for a bit, and then drove from the studio lot down to our hotel. I'm going to get into all these specifics later, but this is, like I said, a little bit of an overview. Um, Made it to our hotel, recorded a podcast for my friend's podcast. It's called The Happiest Podcast on Earth. Recorded a podcast for them, and then got changed and went to Star Wars night. Star Wars night ended at 1 a.m. in Disneyland. We left the park probably around like 1:30. And so that was 4:30 a.m. Eastern time. So it was a full 24 hours being awake and just kind of being on the go nonstop. Slept maybe 5 or 6 hours that night, and then got up and went to Disneyland in the morning. And so I had two cold brew coffees that day, and not a whole lot of sleep and exhaustion and anxiety that was already sort of stirring inside of me. And that evening, Friday evening, I had a panic attack at Docking Bay 7, waiting for some food. I knew it was coming. I could feel it coming. I felt it coming. There was a moment where my friend and I had to separate in the park. He went to go get in line for Docking Bay 7. I went to first aid because I was starting to develop a headache, which was linked to my anxiety. So I went to first aid to get some ibuprofen for that. And um, as soon as we separated, I felt that panic coming on. I am being so honest and so vulnerable and so real with you guys right now. I appreciate you guys giving me the space to talk about this, but this is just kind of a real experience for me. Um, and so it was tough. It was really tough. It was hard. I had to find a corner in Docking Bay 7. What's nice is that they do have sort of booths that are like in these like stations. If you've ever been inside of Docking Bay 7 before, it's the Star Wars themed restaurant that's at Galaxy's Edge, and it exists both in Disneyland and then also at Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World. So found a quiet corner, um, experienced a panic attack, and it was tough. It was embarrassing in some ways, and it shouldn't be embarrassing because it's just it is what it is. It's part of my mental health. But I did feel embarrassed. I felt bad that my friend had to see me that way. Um, I don't think that my friend had ever really seen something like that happen before, and so I felt very embarrassed by that. I was not made to feel embarrassed by any way, by any means, and in any way. It's just sort of a natural reaction for me. Um, and I just felt bad. I felt sad. I didn't want that to exist within our weekend together. I was excited to be able to have time with my friend, and um, so it was a bummer. And we were able to watch fireworks after that. I kind of just like pushed through it, but after that, I was just totally exhausted. I was spent, and I was ready to go back to the hotel, um, which is another thing that I felt bad about. I didn't. The park was not closing yet, and so I didn't want to take away from park time for my friend who was there, and my friend's Hunter. I didn't want to take time away from him, and he was supportive and was like, he was also exhausted and was like, let's just go back to the hotel. So it was tough, and once you have a panic attack, it doesn't necessarily mean that your anxiety is just done for the weekend. It existed throughout the weekend. It didn't always like yield the best version of Nick that I like to give off. And what I mean by that is that I was exhausted, I was tired, I felt very disconnected from my family back home, and so it was just tough. It was really hard, and it was a stress that I sort of carried inside of me throughout the rest of the weekend, and so it was a bummer. But I say all of that to say, as hard as that was and as challenging as that was, it's something that I just live with, and I've been living with for a while now. And obviously, I do the best that I can to try to take care of myself in that, and I mean that in every way. But um, I did like cut out caffeine, and I haven't really had caffeine since then, which has been kind of nice. I'm sure that was a sort of catalyst to how bad it got with the anxiety, but I'm not going to spend all of this time talking about anxiety. I just wanted to give context for that because it is something that happened during my weekend, and it's unfortunate and it's real. And I know that there's probably some of you that also experience that on your trips to the parks. Sometimes the parks can be very overstimulating and it can get the best of you. And so I just want you to know that you are seen, you are loved. I never want anyone to feel guilty for having mental health issues because sometimes I think that people are made to feel that way. And that sucks. It's really unfortunate and it's frustrating. And I feel so deeply for people who are put into positions where they feel like they did something wrong because they've had a mental health issue. And I know because I've been in that position before, and it's hurtful to your core. And so just know that you're seen by me, you are loved, and yeah, I've gotten a lot of messages. I posted about this on my Instagram story on my birthday, which was this week, and a lot of you DM'd me, and you were so supportive, and you talked about things that you've experienced as well. And I'm just so thankful that we have this space where we can just connect and like um, just be open and honest with each other. And I hope that by me sitting here talking about this, it helps somebody know that they're not alone. And, you know, it's a bummer because it could take away, it feels like it takes away from a trip that you've been excited about for a long period of time. I think it's important to just sort of just like try your best to focus on the positive moments that happen. which is what we're going to do now. So um, I'm going to just kind of go through these questions and we'll get into it. We'll talk about the Disneyland trip. Overview, like what I did throughout the weekend. Thursday was our day for the Disney Studio lot tour through D23 and hanging out with a friend who works in the animation building. I'll get into the specifics of that. Star Wars night was Thursday night. Friday, we had our Walt's apartment tour, which was cool. We'll get into that. And then just the rest of the time, there were no official things that happened. It was mostly just park time. Got to experience Pixar Fest, got to experience Seasons of the Force, which is the big Star Wars celebration happening out at Disneyland right now, and got to do a lot of fun things in between. So, and then I flew home Sunday evening. I took a red-eye flight, which also wasn't the best for my anxiety, but I flew home Sunday night. I left LAX at 11:45 p.m. and landed in Tampa around 7:30 a.m. So, let's get into it. Let's get into your questions. The first question goes back to anxiety, and so, you know, I'm not going to apologize for it. It is what it is. Anxiety is real. I dealt with it. I'm open about that, and a lot of you guys ask me questions about it because you struggle with it as well, and I'm here to share my experiences. So this question is, as a fellow anxiety sufferer, what helps you when you get overwhelmed in the park? So that night specifically, finding a quiet place, because I knew that panic episode was coming on, and at that point, because I've struggled with this for almost 10 years now, I know my body well enough to know when, like, it's not going back. Like I can feel it coming, and I can try my best to, like, calm and breathe through it to prevent it from really escalating. But I really felt it coming on at that point. And so just finding a quiet place inside of Docking Bay 7 to just breathe and try my best to, like, push through that. But in other moments where I'm feeling extremely anxious and it hasn't really flipped to that panic mode yet, again, finding quiet places. Like I said, the parks are obviously very overstimulating, and that can, for me personally, everyone experiences anxiety differently, so I don't know that this is the same for everyone, but for me personally, that can feel very overstimulating, and make my anxiety worse for sure. And so I like to find a quiet corner where I can just kind of concentrate on my breathing and tell myself everything's okay, and just try my best to do, like, a mental reset. So finding quiet places. And honestly, like, I would ask a cast member if they have any recommendations of a place where you could sit to just kind of regroup. They know the parks well, and they could probably point you into a direction where it's like a quiet, like, a little bit more of a chill space. So a lot of questions about what hotel did I stay at. I haven't posted this on my Instagram story yet. We stayed at the Howard Johnson, Anaheim. It was a hosted stay. So I have stayed with Howard Johnson before, in their affiliate program, and yeah, it was cool. Was able to stay there. I took over their Instagram for a day. So if you follow me on Instagram at the Theme Park Dad, you were able to see that. It was a lot of fun. The Howard Johnson, their rooms are nice. They're recently renovated. A lot of them have been recently renovated. Some of them have not, but they have great Disney theming, and they're a very, like, short walk to Disneyland. I'd say it probably takes about 10 minutes to get from the hotel to the front gate of either California Adventure or Disneyland. And so we stayed there, and what's nice too is on your walk, like, from the hotel to the parks, you pass by both a Panera Bread and a McDonald's. I'm a big Panera guy for breakfast. We didn't take advantage of that on this trip, but my friend took advantage multiple times of the McDonald's that was there. I was able to grab a couple things from McDonald's as well. If you're not, like, if you don't have a specific thing that you're wanting to eat inside of the parks for breakfast, although you might be missing something because there's a lot of great and delicious options at Disneyland for breakfast, it is a nice way to save a little bit of money by eating at McDonald's as opposed to paying the prices inside of the park. Next question, and these questions don't necessarily pertain to the order of the weekend, but we're just kind of going rapid fire. Can you do both parks in one day? I would say no. Disneyland Park is massive. You've got Galaxy's Edge inside of it. You've got your traditional like Castle Park lands. You've got Tomorrowland. You've got Fantasyland. You've got Adventureland. You've got Frontierland. You've got New Orleans Square. You've got Toontown in the back of the park. There is so much going on inside of Disneyland Park that I don't think that that's just a 1 day park either. I really think that if you are intentional about taking your time going through that park, which you should because there's so many details that exist within Disneyland that don't necessarily exist at Walt Disney World either. It could be a 2 day park for you. I could spend a couple of days, a few days in Disneyland and really just like have a great experience. Again, there's something super magical about that place, and I personally love to just like walk down Main Street and go in and out of the shops and take my time just to like soak it all in. Like I said, there's so many details that you could potentially miss if you're just like rushing to attractions the entire time. And that's just like one of my favorite ways to do Disneyland for sure. So I would say no, you cannot do both parks in 1 day. You could probably do like a quick preview of both parks, but you're not going to get to experience the parks in the way that I feel like they should be experienced. So that's definitely my opinion on it. It's great because you can hop very easily between both parks. You just walk across, and so like I said, you could do like a preview. You could get like a highlight of the different lands, but you're not going to be able to do everything that you should be able to do in your Disneyland experience. What's the biggest difference between Disneyland and Walt Disney World in terms of vibes? It's hard to put your finger on it, and I know that I'm not alone in expressing it this way because I know that other people have experienced it like this as well. But the vibes at Disneyland are so different than at Walt Disney World, and it boils down to there's just like it's a little bit more chill. I feel like at Disneyland, although it is like it's busy, and this trip was probably one of the busiest that I've seen Disneyland, but it's different. It's just Main Street USA at Disneyland compared to Main Street USA at Walt Disney World at Magic Kingdom. I love both. Magic Kingdom is my favorite park at Walt Disney World. I grew up going to Walt Disney World. This is my home parks. So it's not that I love one drastically more than the other, but I do love Disneyland more than I love Walt Disney World. And mostly that's just because I honestly think that it boils down to being like a Disney history buff myself. Not necessarily history buff, but just someone who appreciates like the history of Disney, the Disney company, and the history of Disney parks. Knowing that Walt worked on Disneyland and got to see that park open and got to be there and have a presence at that park for as long as he did. It's super meaningful, and to be able to walk down Main Street at Disneyland and know that like that was Walt's walk as well. Obviously it looks different now, but there's something special about that, and I think that that's one of the things that adds to the vibe of Disneyland for me. That's not to say that I don't love Walt Disney World so much. Like I do, and we are so blessed with so many things that we have to offer here at Walt Disney World. The bubble that exists that you can be inside of at Walt Disney World that you don't necessarily get fully at Disneyland in California. We have 4 parks, 4 incredible parks. We have amazing resorts, and they have great resorts as well. But we just have so much more to offer. So both are great. But I love the vibe of Disneyland so much, and I'm already counting down the days until August when I get to be back over there. So, how many shirts did you purchase? There was a lot of questions about the merchandise situation. I bought, so when we got to California on Thursday, before we did our D23 studio tour, I met up with my friend who works in the animation building at the Walt Disney Studio lot. So the way that works is you guys have probably seen the photos of, or you watched the short that was released for Disney 100 of the characters kind of coming out of the painting. It's called Once Upon a Studio. And they're kind of running up and down the hallways and getting in front of the building that has the big Mickey sorcerer hat. That building is the animation building. That is the current building that the animators use to make the movies that are produced by the Walt Disney Studios. It's where so many iconic films, Frozen, Moana, and films that date even further back than that have been made and produced. Um, and so I have a friend that works in that building, and so we got to meet up with her first. You The public doesn't have access to that building. You only are really able to go inside of that building if you know someone who works there and they set up like time for you to be able to do that. So she just so happened to have a window in between her meetings, was able to just kind of walk us through the hallways of that building. Inside of that building, there's a shop. It's like a Wandering Oakens trading shop. It's literally, it looks like a concession stand window that you would find at like a high school gym. Um, they have exclusive items that can be purchased for people who work or are visiting that building. And so in terms of like Disney exclusivity, these are very, very exclusive items because you only get to purchase them if you work there or you're visiting a friend that works there or a family member. And so I bought a hoodie from there and I bought a t-shirt from there. And then I bought Francie several items from there as well. And then I brought home some gifts for some friends also. So that I those are my favorite items that I purchased on this trip because you can't get them anywhere else. And they actually look really, really cool. Like they're fantastic. I'll post maybe some pictures in them on my Instagram or something like that. But um, so I got several items from that place and stuff for me and stuff for Francie as well. That's where I really like loaded up. The pricing there also is fantastic because it's not like traditional Disney store pricing. It's actually a lot cheaper. I think it was like $35 for a sweatshirt, whereas you would spend probably $60 on that sweatshirt at the parks. And you can't get that sweatshirt at the parks. So I also bought stuff. So after we visited the animation building, you're able to kind of like walk across a bridge to go over to the rest of the studio lot. And this is where like the massive sound stages are. Um, this is where the magic happens as well in terms of like movies are being filmed there, TV shows are filmed there. This is where offices are for Lucasfilm. This is where the Marvel offices are. And it's also where Walt's old office was, and it's the grounds where it's where the water tower is. It's the grounds where Walt and Roy established more so of what the Walt Disney Company is after they were able to like get into this space with Snow White um, premiering. So um, we were able to walk over to this area, and this is where you also start your tour. If you purchase a tour through D23 as a D23 paid member, this is where your tour will begin. You're instructed to park on this side of this property, and it's where you meet up with your tour guide and the rest of the people from your tour. So this is where our tour began, and at the end of that tour, you're able to go into the employee store on that part of the lot, which is it's kind of twofold. There's part of the store that looks like a regular Disney store, and then the other part of it is where merchandise exists that only employees of the studio lot are able to purchase as well, unless you're there for a tour or visiting. And so we were able to go into that store and purchase some items as well. So this is where I did the bulk of my purchases. I bought all of my stuff there. I did buy some stuff, and this is in another question that I'll answer later, but I did buy some stuff for the boys. And then I also, the only real item that I purchased from Disneyland, I think, is a hat. Oh, I bought a popcorn bucket. I bought the Stormtrooper popcorn bucket. But I bought myself a Pixar Fest hat. Other than that, I did pretty good in terms of how much merchandise I purchased. So I held back for sure. A lot of that had to do with spacing. I didn't have a lot of that, and we'll get into that with the car question. What's your favorite and least favorite Disneyland and DCA ride? A very specific question. My favorite Disneyland ride, and this is between both parks. So my favorite ride out in California is Incredicoaster. Incredicoaster is at Pixar Pier. It's at Disney California Adventure Park. You've probably seen the massive Ferris wheel and then the coaster that kind of exists behind that. I love it so much. Pixar Pier is one of my favorite lands in any Disney park, especially as the sun is going down. When it lights up, it just feels like quintessential like amusement park to me. And so for that space to exist within a Disney park is a lot of fun because it's done so well. and Incredicoaster is just a really good time to be. There was one day where it was super clear, the skies were very clear, and being on Incredicoaster, you could just kind of like see the hills or the mountains in the background. And as a Florida boy, we don't get to experience theme parks like that, and so it's just special. I love that coaster. I love that park. Um, Incredicoaster number one. My least favorite attraction at Disneyland or DCA. I feel like this is a little bit of like a cop out because I'm not necessarily talking bad about any ride, but I don't like to do attractions that exist at Disneyland that are the same exact attraction that we have at Walt Disney World. Like, um, for example, Rise of the Resistance or Smuggler's Run. We did both of those on this trip, but it was a Star Wars themed trip, so it made total sense. Um, but those two attractions, typically I would skip those, and I would do things that we don't have here at Walt Disney World. I love the dark rides over at Disneyland. I like to be able to do all of those in Fantasyland. I love the um, I love their It's a Small World. There's a lot of attractions that exist over there that are slightly different than they are here at Walt Disney World, and so that's what I'm going to go for. Um, but yeah, so if it's the same like cut and paste attraction, you can miss me on it. Just because I'm blessed to be able to live so close to the parks here at Walt Disney World. If I didn't live close here, I would want to be able to do those attractions as well. It makes sense because I get to experience those attractions kind of whenever I want to. Whereas someone like my friend who was visiting, Hunter lives in Texas. And so Hunter doesn't get the opportunity to ride those attractions on a regular basis. So for him to be able to do Rise of the Resistance or Smuggler's Run, those are important to him because he doesn't get to do it all the time. And so it's cool that we got to be able to experience those attractions as well. But I guess that would be my least favorite. And that's a very specific answer to Nick, obviously, because I'm spoiled. How are the crowds? I want to say that this is probably the busiest that I've seen Disneyland. This was my fourth time being out there, and it's probably the busiest that I've seen it since I've been going out there. It really did feel pretty busy, but it never felt overly crowded. There were definitely times, and mostly for fireworks, that people were lining up and getting their spots very early for fireworks, which that exists at Disney World as well. I think that what happens at Disneyland is that fireworks typically are only shown over the weekend. So for our trip, they only were shown Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. And then wind is a factor at Disneyland as well, where there's the potential that the wind can cancel the show. And so even trying to watch the fireworks Saturday evening, there was a chance that they were going to get canceled. And so that would have been a huge bummer. But I say all of that to say, because of that exclusivity of the fireworks being only on the weekends, I think that that's why so many people get their spots for them early. So those were moments where it definitely felt more crowded, but then there were also moments where it was totally fine. Like Star Wars night, the crowds were very minimal, in my opinion. There were moments where it definitely picked up when there were certain like shows happening, like the March of the First Order. It felt very busy, but for the most part, the park is also so big. Everything is very spread out. Nothing was ever like unbearable to me. I'm pretty used to crowds at theme parks, Walt Disney World and Universal local, so it was never like super overwhelming to the point where I was like miserable because of the crowds. What is your favorite unit from the Pixar parade? The Pixar parade is so much fun. It's Better Together. The song is a bop. I posted a reel on my Instagram if you guys want to go check that out. It does just like mini clips from each of the like floats that existed. I'm a big fan of Luca, so that Luca float was a lot of fun to see. I got very excited seeing, and Woody is in a lot of parades for sure at Walt Disney World, but he was on this like massive dump truck, and so that was really cool to see. I really liked the details on that. I'm trying to think. Oh, the Four Town. Four Town, the Turning Red float was absolutely epic. The Four Town music playing in the background, incredible. The like The cast was fantastic. It was so fun to see. It was incredible. Kudos to the Imagineering out at Disneyland and at DCA for this entire parade because it's so much fun. Parades at Disneyland are just fantastic. We have great parades here at Walt Disney World, but I'm ready to see some like updates for our parade here at Walt Disney World because they're just incredible out there. Loved it. But I would say Four Town or Luca were my favorites. Um, Someone asked, did you book the studio tour somehow, or did you have a friend take you? I think I kind of answered that. They're two different things. One is a studio tour that takes place through D23, and that is where you get to see Walt's apartment. I'm sorry, Walt's old office, and you get to kind of go in and out of the studio lot, but you don't get to go to the animation building during that paid for tour. Going to the animation building, the Sorcerer Hat building, was only because of my friend. I did want to highlight a special moment. Actually, you know what? I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that for the end, for the final question, because I think it's one of my favorite moments of the trip. Or my favorite moment of the trip. Someone asked, were you sat next to a Nick or a Tim on your flight to Los Angeles? To be honest, I don't know, because I don't want to say I was more of a Tim because I was struggling with anxiety at the time. But yeah, I was in the struggle bus a little bit. And so I probably should have tried to talk to the people around me a little bit more. Maybe that would have helped like me feel a little bit more connected. It would have helped to probably calm me down some. I think that that's one of the biggest like things that I can do when I'm struggling with anxiety is just talk. And so I end up talking a lot. I end up like having like meaningful conversations because it helps me realign myself and feel connected. And so who knows, probably a missed opportunity, but I'm not quite sure if they were a Nick or a Tim because Nick was not Nick on his flight to Los Angeles or home either. And that one was through the night. So I didn't expect to talk to somebody through the night that night for sure. But going out there, we'll never know. What is your Disneyland must do? I talked about Incredicoaster. Absolutely love it. I want to do it every single time. I also mentioned the dark rides. I didn't get to do a lot of the dark rides on this trip, but I really enjoy those. Like, there's just something classic about them. I love walking through the castle. Didn't get to do that this time either, but I definitely will be going to do that in August when I go. But I think the number one must do for me, it's something that I've been doing on every trip, is going to Jolly Holiday. And I probably got this from Tim because I think it's their family tradition. Going to get breakfast at Jolly Holiday and just sitting at the end of Main Street, seeing Sleeping Beauty Castle, eating your breakfast, drinking a coffee, and just soaking in all of the like happiness and vibes that are Disneyland. It's just really special. It's super meaningful. I love it. I love to be able to do that. I feel like it's just a really magical experience. And so I just, like I said, I really like taking my time out at Disneyland. And Jolly Holiday is nice to be able to do that. You can mobile order your breakfast through the app, through the Disneyland My Disney Experience app, and just relax and have a good time. So we did that actually, and this will kind of segue into the next question. And the next question is, how was the Walt tour? I imagine by that they mean the apartment tour. So we grabbed Jolly Holiday before we checked in for the apartment tour. And that was the perfect way to start the morning for sure. The apartment tour, it was really special. It's hard for me because the day before that I did the D23 studio tour. And so in my mind, and I think in Hunter's mind, we were comparing both tours together. And if you put both tours in front of me and told me to pick one, I think I would go with the D23 tour. Not to take away from the magic that the apartment tour was. So it's technically like a tour down Main Street, USA, ending in the apartment building. And so you're walked down Main Street, and different things are pointed out to you. It's a really cool opportunity, again, to slow down and take in the details that exist on Main Street, USA. I like to do that regardless of whether I'm on the tour or not. And they pointed out a lot of fun facts as well. But because I read up on Disneyland history and because I am in that space so often, a lot of the facts were things that I was already aware of. Um, so the guide did fantastic. The knowledge was absolutely there. But I don't know. I think that it also, in terms of pricing, that tour is $160, and then the studio tour was $100. And so it's more expensive to do the apartment tour than it is to do the studio tour. Obviously, you have to be a paid member of D23 in order to do the studio tour, but I don't know. I feel like I'd probably lean more towards the studio tour. Um, that being said, when you finally do get to go into Walt's apartment, um, it's super magical. It is a really special experience. Did I cry? Yes. Did I cry during the studio tour? Yes. I'm an emotional human being, and that's just who I am. But I did. I got choked up and had some tears, specifically sitting inside of the apartment, not sitting, but standing inside of the apartment, looking outside of the window where I'm sure you all have heard, and if you have not heard, there's a lamp that sits in the window of Walt's old apartment. It's at the top of the fire station in Disneyland, right when you walk into kind of the plaza to the left. And you're able to like look outside of that window for a while, where that lamp is sitting, and I was just transported to like Walt. This is what I do in these moments. This is the kind of like nerd that I am, but I like picture myself as Walt looking outside of that window, and like the first few days that Disneyland was open, and obviously we know like that the first day of Disneyland was kind of a disaster. Things were breaking. It was just kind of a little hectic and chaotic, but still, this man had this dream and built this place, and to see the excitement and joy on guests' faces as they ran into the park, I can't imagine like the fulfillment that brought Walt. And so just that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about him standing there looking out the window, just like watching the magic happen that he had dreamt about for so long. And so that really got me. That got me good, standing there inside of the apartment. So super special. Um, is it worth it? I think so. I think it. I say all of that to say I'm not trying to downplay the apartment tour by any means, because I think that like getting to say that I've been inside of that apartment building as a Disney fanatic, it's a big win for me. And I'm so glad that I got to do it. I'm so glad that I got to be in that space. Um, I don't necessarily feel the need to ever do it again, except for if Francie ever wanted to, and I would absolutely do it with her. But for me personally, I don't necessarily feel the need to do it again, but I'm glad that I was able to, and I'm glad that I was able to get a picture in there as well. So, favorite new character meet and greet. There are so many fun characters that are out and about right now for Pixar Fest. Um, I didn't get the opportunity to actually meet Ember and Wade. I got to see them a few times walk by before their meet and greet started. But Ember and Wade are from Elemental, if you've never seen it before. I love that movie so much. It is so good. And Wade and I are kindred spirits. If you've ever seen the movie, you'll understand, but I'm a big Wade fan. But then I think like my favorite like character greeting meet and greet that we did was also part of Pixar Fest. That's Luca and Alberto. Um, I also love Luca. I feel like Luca missed its moment because it was released sort of like during the height of the pandemic and it went straight to Disney Plus, which was totally understandable. But it bums me out a little bit because I think like it's slept on a little bit, and it's such a fun movie. The boys love it so much, and being out there with my friend and getting to meet two other friends that are Luca and Alberto, and there's some similarities in terms of personalities between me and Luca and Alberto and Hunter. And so it was just a fun little moment that we had together, and we got to get a cool picture together. So that would be my favorite meet and greet that we got to experience while we were out there. I love meeting characters. And Disneyland characters are a lot of fun because a lot of time they're roaming. And so it's fun to just be able to stop and talk to them. Um, Hunter's not a big character guy, and so he was not like as gung ho about stopping and meeting. He loves to experience all of the attractions, and I'm happiest when the people that I'm with are having a great time. And so I tend to be the kind of person who's just like like it's fine. I'm okay if I'm not stopping and doing all of the things that I necessarily feel like I want to do. I'm definitely happy to just kind of like go and watch other people have a great time. Maybe that makes me a little bit of a people pleaser, probably so, but it's okay. It's who I am, and I really enjoy experiencing theme parks that way. I like to kind of just like be along for the ride and watch people have a great time. That brings me the most joy for sure. Favorite Pixar Fest snack that I had. We this will probably be talked about a lot more with the happiest podcast on earth, so I don't want to like steal all of their thunder, but let's just say many a churros were consumed on this trip. um, and so you'll have to go over there to check that out to see what I'm talking about. But yeah, so because we consumed so many churros, there was one churro that kind of sticks out into my brain, and I think it's called the Junkyard Jamboree. It's here for Pixar Fest, and it's in Cars Land, and it's a churro that had like a chocolate powder, but also an espresso powder on it. It was delicious. Big fan. Loved that churro so much. I'm trying to think about some of the other things that are specific to Pixar Fest, and to be honest, I did. Oh, the last day that I was there at Alien Pizza Planet, I had the cheeseburger pizza. I really liked that pizza. It was really good. I would totally eat it again. So, top two: cheeseburger pizza from Alien Pizza Planet, and then the Junkyard Jamboree churro from the churro cart in Cars Land. Um, Favorite part of Star Wars Night. Star Wars Night, there were a lot of highlights. It was a lot of fun. The old anxiety had not gotten the total best of me at that point. It existed for sure, but it just wasn't raging like it was the next day, unfortunately. And so I felt more relaxed at Star Wars Night. We had immediately when we got there, and we mobile ordered these well in advance, like earlier in the day. We were able to select the pickup time. The event starts at 9 p.m. You can get into the park at 6. We didn't get into the park until 8 p.m., but there's a window from 8 to 9 that you can order some of the, like, or not 8 to 9, but 8 until the end of the event. If you're there for the event, you can order some of the like exclusive treats that exist at like some of the quick service locations throughout the park. And so we ordered I think they were the Dagobah beignets, something like that. But they were basically beignets that were shaped like a Yoda head, and they had a matcha powder and white chocolate powder on them, and then like a matcha sauce that you could dip them in. If you like matcha or green tea, so good. Like matcha is a popular a flavor in our household. Francie really enjoys matcha. She would have loved these beignets so much. So I really enjoyed those. That was a highlight of Star Wars Night for me. Um, to be honest, like I think overall in general, what was the highlight? This is going to be probably a little cheesy and corny, but just to be there with my friend, um, being there with Hunter, who also loves Star Wars and appreciates Star Wars, like the highlight for me was just walking around together and like randomly quoting Star Wars quotes, or like watching him um, like impersonate some of the characters that we were getting to see. They do such a fantastic job with their characters there. Um, the entertainment during Star Wars Night is phenomenal. A lot of the characters are not like traditionally like stop meet and greet locations. They're, if you've ever been to Oogie Boogie Bash out at DCA, it's more like walk-through experiences, so you're getting to record them as you're walking past them. But it's a cool opportunity to get to see those characters in a much like faster amount of time. But yeah, I'd say my favorite part would be just getting to experience that evening with Hunter, somebody who developed he developed for the happiest podcast on earth an entire thing called Star Boys, and that's like his OG idea, and like it took off, and it was a whole segment on that podcast. He's a big Star Wars fan. He's definitely a little bit of a traditionalist. I don't know that he's like a huge fan of the new stuff that they've been putting out, but actually I know that he's not a huge fan. But getting to like be in that space with him, and because we both share a love for Star Wars, it was fun. It was really cool. Yeah. So, what is the best souvenir that you brought home for the boys and Francie? I talked about my best souvenir that I brought home for Francie. That was all of the merchandise from the animation building. For the boys, Ethan loves cars. He loves cars so much. So I knew I wanted to get something from Radiator Springs for him. And the last evening that I was there, I went and picked up. It was actually pretty cool. I picked up. They had two cars, or not two, but they had different types of cars that are the ride vehicles for Radiator Springs Racers, which is kind of like the main attraction there in Cars Land, and that attraction is just like Test Track here at Walt Disney World, but themed to Radiator Springs. It is phenomenal. It is an A plus attraction. It is so good. The details are incredible. A lot of people, this is their favorite attraction out there, and it totally makes sense why. Um, but they sell like model almost like little Hot Wheel cars that are the ride vehicles. And so I grabbed two. I grabbed a green one because that was the color of the car that Hunter and I got to ride in when we rode it together on this trip. And then I grabbed a red one, and it was pretty cool because I met up with some friends the last evening that I was there. And when we got into our ride vehicle, after I had already purchased these two cars, we got into a red car. There are different color cars available that you can ride. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Cool little detail that like I was able to purchase the two cars that I was able to ride in while I was out there. Um, for Luke, I knew it needed to come from Avengers Campus, and it's funny because I was on the phone with him and Francie that last night that I was out there, and I told him that I had just bought Ethan's gift, and then I was on my way to go buy his gift, and he said, "Oh, well, where are you?" And I said, "Avengers Campus," and he was like, "Huh, interesting enough. That's exactly where I'd want something from." And so I knew it. I knew that it had to be coming from Avengers Campus. Avengers Campus is phenomenal at DCA. It's a whole experience. You could spend hours at Avengers Campus and just be seeing something different constantly happening. The heroes are walking around everywhere. There's shows happening left and right. I love Avengers Campus so much. But anyways, I grabbed a little spider bot for him. Spider bots are something that is from the attraction called Web Slingers that exist within Avengers Campus. It's a Spider-Man themed attraction. It's a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun with this specific attraction on this trip because we met up with a couple of friends who were out there. They were on a best friend trip as well, and it was cool just to be able to like ride with them and constantly try to get like a new high score. I say high score. It's an attraction where you're sitting inside of a ride vehicle. It's a 3D attraction, so you put on glasses and you act like you're shooting webs towards the screen. It picks up like motion sensors, and you're constantly trying to get like a high score by taking out these spider bots. So got Luke a little spider bot, and he was very excited and very happy. All right, next question. We only have a few more left. How was the Corvette? And what was your favorite part of Cars Land? So, a twofold car question. First up, the Corvette. So, Hunter rented a Corvette. There were a lot of like questions, a lot of conversations on my behalf leading up to this trip about the car situation. What car was Hunter going to be renting? How was I going to handle the luggage situation? So, I knew what the space was going to be leading up to it, and so I had to plan accordingly. I was able to bring a carry-on bag, and inside of that carry-on put all of my clothes as well as a empty duffel bag so that when I got to Disneyland, I could fill the duffel bag with all of the merchandise that I bought. So that's how I was able to navigate the luggage situation. When I got to LAX, I was sitting inside of the terminal, and Hunter pulled up in a black Corvette. I think it was like one of the newest models. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a big cars guy, so I don't know all of the details surrounding the Corvette. I just know that Hunter was living his best life. It was a surprise for me for sure, but it was 1000% more about Hunter than it was for me, just because he was so excited about it, which was fine. Again, I love watching other people like live their best lives, and so it was cool and fun to be able to see his excitement behind the car. The car itself, slightly terrifying. It's just like it revs up for sure, and it's so small. Like we were packed in there for sure, and yeah, I don't know. I would personally never drive that type of vehicle, but I'm glad Hunter had his moment. Um, so I think that answers any questions that I also saw about the car. That's how I made the luggage work. The car we only had rented for that day. We returned it the next morning, and so it wasn't an issue leaving Disneyland because we both flew into different airports. He flew into John Wayne. I flew into LAX, and we both took Ubers separately to our respective airports as we were leaving because we left at different times. And so it was not an issue as we were traveling home because I was in an Uber on my way to LAX and my duffel bag and my carry on were good to go. What is your favorite part of Cars Land? Radiator Springs Racers for sure. That attraction is phenomenal. But on the last night that I was there, and I say last night that I was there, I was able to stay in the parks until later in the evening because my flight left LAX at 11:45. I was able to stay in the parks till like 8:30 p.m. And so that was kind of the last evening that I was there. But we watched the Shaboom happen. That's a moment inside of Cars Land where when the sun sets, and usually it's like right at sunset, like per like what Apple tells you on the weather app sunset's going to be. Um, the street kind of like fills up with people, and the cast members have a little moment where they do like a conga line around like this big circle inside of Cars Land, and they're playing music from the movie, and all of the lights turn on in Cars Land, and it's kind of like a wave of the lights turning on down kind of that main strip. It's really special. It's a lot of fun. It's nothing like extraordinary, but it's a fun little moment for sure. And it's just magical. It's just fun to see so many people happy and having fun because music's playing and lights are turning on. So that is something that I would also highly recommend to do if you're planning a trip out to Disneyland. Make sure that you spend one of your nights at sunset being in Cars Land. Favorite food that I ate while I was there. So this is not necessarily Pixar related. It's favorite food that I had while I was there. I had a really good burrito from San Francisco. That was delicious. I love the food in San Francisco. The theming looked really cool. All of the details. That was the first time that I had gotten to see it like fully completed. Um, but whatever, like the thing that's jumping to my brain immediately in terms of food that was delicious was a burger that I had at Lamplight Lounge. So originally we were going to do Carthay Circle. We decided to pivot and cancel those dining plans, which I still want to do in the future, but I think it was a good choice on our behalf. We were just pretty tired and I don't know, we weren't feeling like the fine dining experience at that point. And so I had also booked a reservation at Lamplight Lounge that I was able to modify leading up to the trip and get it to be a little bit earlier in the afternoon. We were able to get drinks, and I had a burger from Lamplight. It was delicious. Hunter also had, it was like a Brussels Caesar salad. It was basically Brussels sprouts with like Caesar dressing. If you like Brussels sprouts, so good. 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. Lamplight has never disappointed me in terms of like the taste of the food. So the burger from Lamplight Lounge was phenomenal. It was like, there was nothing super crazy about it. It had this like avocado, maybe it was called an avocado aioli. I'm not quite sure, but whatever was on it, so good. The fries were also very tasty. um, what do I wish Disney World has that Disneyland has? Um, I could probably do a whole, Tim and I could do a whole episode on comparing Disneyland and Walt Disney World. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on this. Um, I would say there's details in their Thunder Mountain that don't exist in ours, and I feel like they'd be easy to add. There's like dynamite and sort of like explosions that happen. Um, I don't know why we don't have those at Walt Disney World, and so I think that's a very easy detail to throw into our Thunder Mountain. I wish that we had it. Um, as far as attractions, Small World. Didn't get to do Small World on this trip, but one of the things that I love about the Small World, It's a Small World at Disneyland, is that they have characters from Disney movies that are respective to the countries that those films are based in. And it's just fun. It adds a whole other element to It's a Small World that we don't have at Walt Disney World. And I feel like it'd be an easy addition to our It's a Small World as well. So, two very specific things. Like I said, we could probably do an entire episode on the comparison of Walt Disney World and Disneyland. This next question also has to do with that. Which quick service do you wish we had at Walt Disney World that we don't, that they have out at Disneyland? Um, I'm trying to think if there's like a specific quick service location that Bengal Barbecue is great because Bengal Barbecue gives you it's nothing like, there's not a lot of variety at Bengal Barbecue. They have like meat skewers, so they have chicken, they have beef. I believe there's a pork option, and it's served with white rice. I'm a huge fan of like eating at a theme park and eating food that maybe feels like a home cooked meal. Um, Obviously, I love my burgers. I like corn dogs, I like churros, I like all of those things. But sometimes when you're there for a long period of time, you just want like sustenance, I guess. Something that just like, I don't know, that's not super heavy. And so being able to get some beef and rice with like some veggies, big win. So Bengal barbecue would be fun to have. I think adding barbecue to Adventureland at Walt Disney World in the Magic Kingdom would be nice because there's not a ton of options for dining in Magic Kingdom. So I'm going to go with that. One thing that I didn't get to try, and I didn't even realize this until after I left, was eating at Tiana's Palace. So that was a bummer, and that's definitely something that I'm going to make a priority on my trip in August, is going to Tiana's Palace, because there's a lot of food there that I was interested in trying and didn't get the opportunity to go. Sometimes the trips are just so fast it like ends and you didn't even realize it happened. Someone asked, is it better to fly into LAX or to John Wayne? I always fly to LAX. It's different for different people. So flying from Tampa or Orlando, I can get a direct flight on Delta to LAX. I can't get a direct flight to John Wayne. I'd have to, and that's specific through Delta. I love flying Delta. I can't do direct. I would have to have a connecting flight, usually out of Atlanta. There are airlines that will fly you directly from MCO to John Wayne. I think in terms of location to Disneyland, John Wayne is much closer and a lot easier to navigate, and definitely a less expensive Uber ride from the parks to the airport. Just compare and contrast. Sometimes the flight, though, is more expensive flying to John Wayne than it is flying to LAX. So I would say just weigh your options. Look and see what's going to be more cost effective for you. LAX is a tough airport to navigate, and the traffic can be kind of brutal sometimes. But I like hopping off the plane at LAX with my dreams and my cardigan. So, how many corn dogs did I eat? I had one corn dog on Star Wars night, and it wasn't even a traditional corn dog. It was like covered in all kinds of toppings, sort of like a sour cream, corn, beans, salsa. It was a specific item for Star Wars night. It was super tasty. I don't think that I got like the traditional corn dog flavor, although it did sort of exist there. I wanted to get it my last evening there. My anxiety was through the roof that evening, as I was preparing to travel home, and I ended up going with the cheeseburger pizza, which I was happy with. But if I'm being completely honest, that night was kind of just a mess for me in general. And so my brain was kind of all over the place. And the last thing that I could think of was sitting and eating a corn dog. So I'll have to get a traditional corn dog when I go back in August. Absolutely. How do you feel about, there's two more questions. How do you feel about the new Pixar fireworks? So we got to watch both fireworks shows. The first night we got to watch the fireworks in Batuu. And when I say first night that we were able to watch fireworks. So Friday evening, we watched the fireworks in Batuu. And like I said, based on what I had just experienced, my brain was kind of all over the place. But I will say that watching the fireworks from Batuu, watching fireworks happen in Galaxy's Edge, and listening to it to a Star Wars soundtrack was phenomenal. It was done so well. It is mind blowing that those fireworks are the same fireworks that you're watching in front of the castle to Pixar themed music and clips, because they aligned with the music so well at times, the Star Wars music. So I thought that was phenomenal, and I highly recommend, if you get to go during Season of Force, watch the fireworks from there. Oh, I can't not talk about this. This is not fireworks related, but May the 4th, we started our day. We started on Matterhorn, but then we immediately went over and did Hyperspace Mountain. Hyperspace Mountain was phenomenal. I'm bummed I only did it one time during this trip. I don't know why or how I didn't do it more than once. It was down a lot, like almost the entire night for Star Wars night. It was down, which was a huge bummer. But that is such a fun attraction. There was a moment where you're going down one of the hills and a TIE fighter, it looks like a TIE fighter flies over you. Obviously, it's not a real TIE fighter, but it looked so cool. There's so much happening. The soundtrack's phenomenal. 10 out of 10 for Hyperspace Mountain. Anyways, Pixar fireworks. Pixar fireworks were a little bit stressful. Again, I keep saying this and I keep going back to it, but it's almost like the anxiety started to just kind of like trickle down throughout the weekend. But the Pixar fireworks, we got into a spot semi early, and we were sort of in front of Sleeping Beauty Castle. If you're someone who's used to going to Walt Disney World and watching fireworks shows in front of the castle at Walt Disney World, keep in mind that Sleeping Beauty Castle and Cinderella Castle are obviously very, very different. Sleeping Beauty Castle is much smaller than Cinderella Castle, which absolutely affects your ability to see the projections onto the castle comparative to Walt Disney World. The bigger the castle, the easier it is to see the projections. And so we positioned ourselves into a location where there was unfortunately a small tree that was sort of in front of Sleeping Beauty Castle. I don't even really understand the purpose of this tree. Like, this tree is just kind of like, it's just very random. So that blocked a lot of the projections, which is a bit of a bummer, but we did get to see, this is spoiler alert, so if you're trying to like avoid spoilers for these Pixar fireworks that happen, just go ahead and skip ahead. But Buzz Lightyear does fly over the castle, which was really cool to see. And then the house from Up also flies over Sleeping Beauty Castle, which I love watching these things happen at Disneyland. It happens also during Wondrous Journeys with Baymax and the Blue Fairy. But that added to the show, absolutely. But there were moments, honestly, during the show that I also feel like felt a little flat for me, where it was just basically showing a lot of clips from some of the different Pixar films. And I don't know, I kind of got lost in it a little bit. I felt myself being like, okay, this is dragging on a little. But it really rallied for me at the end, because there was a moment with Buzz and Woody, and they were just talking about their friendship and talking about like, you always have a friend in me. And so, I don't know. It's just, friendship is something that means a lot to me. Friendship is, I love being a friend, and I love being there for my friends, and I always want my friends to also just be there for me. And so like, it just was super meaningful, and it was super powerful. Friendship, something that I've definitely navigated through a lot in the last year of my life. And so it was just a really special and cool moment, just seeing Buzz and Woody up there. They set the bar high when it comes to what a friendship should look like. So, and they've been setting that bar high for me since I was a kid watching those films. And so, anyway, yeah, so it rallied at the end for sure. I really loved the finale of it, and the fireworks are just beautiful over Sleeping Beauty Castle. So, last question, my happiest memory from the trip. When we were on the D23 studio tour, our tour guide, we were walking past one of the buildings, and she saw several cast members that worked on the studio lot. I don't know if they're referred to as cast members, actually. Some of the employees that work on the studio lot. She started talking to them, and one of the employees, her name was Dawn. I'm going to feel really bad if I got that name wrong. Also, on the tour, we were with a group of other people. Some of you all were on the tour with us. And so thank you for saying hello. That meant a lot to me. And it was cool to be able to experience that with you all. But and I don't remember names. I don't think I even really got names, but you were a family from Minnesota, so hello. But uh, our tour guide stopped and spoke to a lady who has been working at that studio tour lot for years. And she made the comment to our tour guide, hey, if you have time later, come knock on Soundstage B's door and I might have a surprise for you. And so the tour guide was like, oh, we're going to make time. So this is not something that is a part of the tour by any means. This is something that like a magical moment that happened for us because of this sweet lady who worked on the lot. And so at the end of our tour, we walked by Soundstage B. For context, Soundstage B, it's a recording soundstage where actors go in to do voiceovers for animated characters. It's where actors will go in and re-record their lines after shooting certain films. For context, every Pixar audio has been recorded in Soundstage B. Every Pixar film. Every actor that is in those films has gone to the Walt Disney Studio lot, walked into this soundstage, put their headphones on, and recorded the lines for these incredible, iconic characters. Every Marvel movie, the actors have gone back into this soundstage to re-record their lines after shooting the film. Walt himself worked in this soundstage on voicing Mickey Mouse. So we went up to the soundstage door, or not we, but our tour guide knocked on the door and it opened. And the sweet lady was standing there and she invited us in and basically walked us around the soundstage, gave us the opportunity to stand at the podium where the mic is. We got to go back into see the soundboard where people are controlling the audio while these actors are recording their lines. And so that was the happiest memory from the trip for me. It was something that like not many people get to experience being in that space. We also got to walk into Soundstage C, which is right next door to Soundstage B. Again, not part of the traditional tour, and go inside and see where they do the sound mixing for like all of these films. Some of the most iconic like moments have been sound mixed here. I think about the portal scene from Avengers Endgame where Captain America and everybody is assembling to take on Thanos. That was sound mixed inside of this room. So just absolutely iconic, and to be able to stand in a space where so much magic has been made, and some of the films have come to life that like we cherish and love, and that my kids cherish and love, and that my parents have cherished and loved. Very special, very meaningful, and that was definitely the highlight for me. Overall, so many magical moments absolutely happened on this trip, and I'm thankful that I've been able to take you guys along on those through my Instagram. I'm going to continue to post stories. I've gotten a little behind. It's been a little bit of a hectic and crazy week for me. But thank you guys. Thank you for sitting here and listening to me talk about my Disneyland trip for over an hour. I appreciate that so much. I appreciate all of you. Thank you guys for tracking with us. Stay tuned. Next week, we'll be doing a lot of news coverage. We'll be back together again. We've got a lot to talk about. I'm sure Tim will want to talk about his adventures this past weekend. I have some big news to share in terms of a job update, so I'll be sharing with you guys next week. And who knows, in a couple hours, we might be getting an official date, an official announcement from Disney on an opening date for Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which looks like it'll be June 28th. Stay tuned. Appreciate you tracking with us. Love you guys. See you later.